Today's most Buffalo story of the day is a celebration of the boys of summer down in Jamestown.
Come get it, come get it!
They recently announced the local team has a new name, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But Jamestown has a rich history of baseball dating back to the 1930s, and in that time they've had an interesting series of ever-evolving names. Things started out well enough, I suppose. The first team, the Jaguars, folded after a year. Then came the Falcons, the Tigers, the Dodgers, the Braves, the Falcons again, the Expos, thanks to an affiliation with Montreal. And then things got really interesting in the mid-90s when they became the Jamestown Jammers. Now that was thanks to a fan vote, which, if we have learned nothing after the Bodie McBoatface debacle of 2016, it's that if you leave it up to the public to name things, you get what you deserve. Well, Jamestown Jammers might have been pretty catchy, but it was not as easy to identify as a tiger or a falcon. The team mascot at the time was named JJ Jammer. It was described as resembling a Tasmanian devil holding a baseball bat. By 2006, apparently tired of answering questions like, what's a jammer and why is that Tasmanian devil holding a bat? Jamestown decided to change the logo to make it more in line with the Jammer name. So they came up with this. A bunch of angry grapes wearing a baseball hat. And it was, of course, a nod to Chautauqua County's rich history of grape growing. Now here we are in 2020. The names, affiliations, and leagues have changed time and time again. But Jamestown baseball is still alive and well, and it has been reborn with a new website, and I mentioned that new name. This season, they are ready to play ball and breathe in the sweet smell of success as the Tarp Skunks. And like any good mascot, there's an entire section on the new website devoted to explaining it. Long story short, there are apparently a lot of skunks in Jamestown. They love hanging out at the ball field, and like the team that now bears their name, they know the best offense is a good defense. They wrap it all up on the website by saying, quote, whenever someone walks or drives through Jamestown and sees a familiar black and white friend, they will think of one thing: the baseball team. The Jamestown Tarp Skunks. Let this new era begin and allow me to say, go Tarp Skunks!
I want a Tarp Skunks ball cap now.
Don't you feel like there's a lot of opportunity there to have the tail coming out the back and the whole nine? Tarp Skunks.
Oh my word.
It's nuts and I love it. Way to go, Jamestown. And you know what? Baseball season.
I love minor league baseball.
Yeah, it's just fun. Yeah. It's good, and the weather.